Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series, Essays on the Gita, with our beloved Ranga. We are on page, there are many different pages, but I have page 72. I think that's the latest edition. And the sentence begins, "But whence then come this conscious intelligence?"
So I'll read the para first and then we'll come back for details. But whence then come this conscious intelligence and conscious will which we perceive to be so large a part of our being and which we commonly and instinctively refer not to the Prakriti but to the Purusha? According to the Sankhya, this intelligence and will are entirely a part of the mechanical energy of nature and are not properties of the soul. They are the principle of buddhi, one of the 24 tattvas, the 24 four cosmic principles. Prakriti in the evolution of the world bases herself with her three gunas in her as the original substance of things, unmanifest, inconscient, out of which are evolved successively 5 elemental conditions of energy or matter, for matter and force are the same in the Sankhya philosophy. These are called by the names of the 5 concrete elements of ancient thought: ether, air, fire, water, and earth. But it must be remembered that they are not elements in the modern scientific sense, but subtle conditions of material energy and nowhere to be found in their purity in the gross material world. All objects are created by the combination of these 5 subtle conditions or elements. Again, each of these 5 is the base of one of 5 subtle properties of energy or matter: sound, touch, form, taste, and smell, which constitute the way in which the mind sense perceives objects. Thus, by these 5 elements of matter, put forth from primary energy, and these 5 sense relations through which matter is known, is evolved, what we would call in modern language the objective aspect of cosmic existence. So,
Quite a bit here.
yeah, it's quite, and we'll have to. This refers to the chart that we have put up on the. But since we don't have the chart here, I will just explain to a certain extent. Actually, it is also related with the next para, but we'll take it step by step. So, to begin with, remember that the Sankhya is saying that, which we discussed last time, that there is a consciousness and there is a force. And these two are separate elements. They are, so that's why the Sankhya is not a unitary philosophy. It's not a, what is called, what is
Homogeneous,
it called?
homogeneous, or how would
There
you
is
call it?
The Advaita. It's not a Advaita philosophy, it's a Dvaita philosophy. Dualistic, not monistic. That's the word I'm looking for.
Okay.
So it's not a monistic philosophy like the Advaita, but it's a dualistic philosophy. The ultimate reality is twofold: consciousness and force. And they are always working together, but they always remain separate, like two friends. Okay? So, if that is so, and consciousness is what we normally understand by awareness, although it's more, and Prakriti is mechanical blind energy, unconscious energy. If that is so, then how are we conscious in our body, mind, life is a question that is asking. Okay? Because it is Prakriti that builds our mind, our life, and our body. And the soul, the Purusha, is deep inside. So if Prakriti, which is unconscious, is creating all these things, how come that we feel that we are conscious? That's the question being asked. So, but whence then come this conscious intelligence and conscious will, which we perceive to be so large a part of our being, and which we commonly and instinctively refer not to Prakriti but to the Purusha?
But that would be wrong.
That would be wrong according to
Yes.
Sankhya.
Yes.
And Sri Aurobindo says Sankhya is largely true, but the soul purposely is unconscious in the beginning, but it has the power to become conscious. So it is not absolutely correct to say that the Purusha is only consciousness and Prakriti is
Only action. Yes.
we can't say that it is only inactive consciousness. The soul does have a say in the matter, it has a say, but at a later stage in its evolution. In the beginning, yes, the soul is unconscious and it has submitted itself to the domination of Prakriti by its own will. We are not conscious of our soul which is deep inside us. But by development through many, many lives, there comes a time when we can become conscious of that. So now he is explaining this. We constantly refer to our consciousness to Purusha and not to Prakriti. Because Prakriti in the universe is the flowing of rivers, the coming of light from the sun, the wind blowing. So all these are mechanical, unconscious. The tide is coming in and going away. There is no consciousness there. So that is Prakriti. So how is consciousness coming in the body, mind, life? That's the question. So he's saying, according to the Sankhya, this intelligence and will are entirely a part of the mechanical energy of nature and are not properties of the soul. So this is largely true, that what we think that I am doing, I am acting, I am reading, okay, all this is largely an illusion. It is not you who are doing at all. It is universal nature which is making your mind think, or rather you can say thoughts are occurring in your mind through the mental plane of consciousness of nature. The life plane of nature, universal nature, is giving you your vitality. The energy is hers, not yours. Your energy is only a small part of the universal energy in man. Your body is made of matter, which is coming from nature. So your whole outer structure is only nature.
But what about in the future poetry when Sri Aurobindo praises these great poets? Are they not receiving something from a higher?
They are receiving, but these things can, they can receive. No?
Is it still universal?
In fact, even when you are having a thought, your mind is receiving from nature.
Mm-hmm.
So reception is there. And reception can be, for the normal man, it's from universal nature. But for the poet, it is from higher planes and he receives.
Okay.
Even we receive sometimes, but unconsciously. The soul is always trying to guide us. But it has to come through the thick curtains of mind, life and matter. And so by the time it comes out, that instruction or that guidance is largely lost. And sometimes when it comes also, you think it's a thought or an emotion. You don't attribute it to the soul, normally, unless you are fully awake spiritually. So now he's saying that according to the Sankhya, this intelligence and will are entirely a part of the mechanical energy of nature and are not properties of the soul. This is largely true because when your consciousness comes out of the body and you get liberation, you realize that you have been doing nothing at all. It is universal nature which is making your mind think, your vital have emotions, and your body have action. So that you realize. Then you realize, which is there pointed out very clearly in by Sri Aurobindo as well as the Gita, that you are not the doer. The ego thinks that it is the doer, but it is not the doer. It is universal nature which is the doer. Then how do we feel that we are acting? That is by reflection of nature on the Purusha. By reflection of whatever is being done here on the Purusha. I explained that the other day with the white screen of the white screen is a consciousness which is static. The cinema screen is static. It is featureless. It is white. But even white is a feature. This soul, the consciousness of the self, is absolutely featureless, but it is real, infinite, eternal, static. And on that, Purusha is throwing its images.
Right.
So, you think that the screen thinks that it is having these actions. But when the reflection stops, that's when the soul has come out and it realizes that it was making a mistake. That I am only the white infinite screen and I am not the movement. These images are not mine. Yeah.
So even though we can understand in some way that we have a soul, are we not basically marionettes, puppets?
Yes. At our normal level of level 1, where we are in ignorance, we are marionettes.
Yes.
We are puppets of nature.
Yes.
And that's where the ego comes in.
Yes.
The ego thinks that no, I am not a puppet. I am deciding myself to do this. So if you argue with someone who has told you this and say, look, you are saying that I am compelled to do things by nature. So I can understand what you are saying if you say that when you are thirsty, you go and drink a glass of water. Who is making you thirsty? Nature. But now I'll prove you wrong. Okay? You can say, without being thirsty, I'm being compelled by nobody. But I decide to go and have a glass of water. It's my will. So there I proved you wrong. I'm not being driven by nature. I'm being driven by myself. The answer will be that even that is part of nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you are really puppets. So now Sremda is coming to. So according to the Sankhya, this intelligence and will are entirely a part of the mechanical energy of nature and are not the properties of the soul. They are the principle of buddhi, one of the 24 tattvas. The word Sankhya comes from Sankhya. Sankhya is number. So in Sankhya philosophy, there are 24 basic principles. And those principles are, since the question has come up, I am telling you, first of all, there is Prakriti. And Prakriti, there is an objective side and a subjective side. The objective side is what is outside in the universe. And the subjective side is what is there in man, the conscious part. So the objective part is ether, air, fire, water, earth. Okay? So ether, air, fire, water, earth are the not what the name suggests to you. It is not ether, it is not fire, it's not air. It is the increasing density of that subtle substance. The subtlest substance is ether. When that substance becomes a little more gross or less subtle, it becomes air. You can feel it, but you can't touch it, you can't taste it. Yeah, sorry, you can touch it, but you can't see it, you can't hear it. Here also you can to a certain extent. And you can also not smell it or taste it. So that is air. Then after that comes fire. Fire, now you can also touch it and see it. It has become more gross. So these are only representative images to tell you the increasing density of that substance.
This is what he says here. Yes, that it's not a material.
That's right. Sremda is
Form.
explaining that. So
Yeah.
he's saying they are not elements in the modern scientific sense. Okay? But they are subtle conditions of material energy and nowhere to be found in their purity in their gross material world. So this is one side. Then on the other side, corresponding to them, you have the sound, contact, form, taste and smell. So 10, 5 here and 5 here, 10. And then there is the Prakriti, and on the subjective side, you have Buddhi, Ahankara, and Manas. Buddhi is intelligence, consciousness, and Ahankara is the ego. And you have Manas, which is the physical mind which interprets the senses. That again divides into two, which is the inferent senses and efferent senses, Jnanendriyas and Karmendriyas, eye, ear, nose, tongue, skin. And on the other hand, foot, mouth, and the two organs at the lower end of the body. So you have 24 principles. This is the Sankhya philosophy. These are the features of Prakriti. So you count them, it comes to 24. So 5 Jnanendriyas, 5 Karmendriyas, 10. 5 ether, air, fire, water, earth, sound, contact, form, taste and smell. So 10 and 10, 20. Then you have Buddhi, Ahankara, Manas. That makes
23.
23. And you have Prakriti, which
Prakriti,
is 24.
24.
So this is the Prakriti. Okay, I continue. These are called by the names of the 5 concrete elements of ancient thought: ether, air, fire, water, earth. But it must be remembered that they are not elements in the modern scientific sense, but subtle conditions of material energy, and nowhere to be found in their purity in the gross material world. You will not find these in the material world. They are all a mixture, and their combination creates all forms. All objects are created by the combination of these 5 subtle conditions or elements. Again, each of these 5 is the base of one of 5 subtle properties of energy or matter: sound, touch, form, taste, and smell, which constitute the way in which the mind sense, which is the manas, perceives objects. So the mind sense is perceiving the objects and telling you what you are seeing or you are not seeing. Okay, we have discussed the mind sense very often. Manas is that part of the brain which is interpreting your senses. And if the brain is not interpreting your senses, you will understand nothing. Proof: the baby, newborn baby. He has got all the senses, but he understands nothing. Neither his mother, nor the language being spoken, nor anything at all. He is seeing, he is hearing, but nothing. The brain has not yet been programmed to interpret the images. Okay, so that is what happens when you make your mind silent. When you make your mind silent, the brain is not interpreting. It has gone on a holiday. Only the senses are working. Senses are collecting data: visual data, auditory data, olfactory data, gustatory data, and tactual data, and sending to the brain. But brain says, I am on a holiday. So what happens? You see the physical world without meaning. No interpretation. You just see the things. They don't seem to have any sense. This is the experience of the illusion of the world. The brain is not interpreting.
Then why did this man to whom Sri Aurobindo gave the silent mind, why did he say he was going crazy?
Because he was not sufficiently developed to understand the value of what he had got. Because when your mind is silent, it's not that immediately power and knowledge pour in. There's a big gap between the two. So that gap, he is unable to think. And he wants to think. So he says, I have become an idiot. It can be quite disturbing also. So that's the thing. Okay, so then he says, sound, touch, form, we did that. Thus, by these 5 elements of matter put forth from primary energy is, in Sankhya, the subtle matter, primary energy is pradhana. They call it pradhana. It is from there that all action takes place. Matter is known, through which matter is known, is evolved. What we would call in modern language the objective aspect of existence. The objective aspect is the substances and sound, touch, form, sight, taste and smell. So this is the objective side. But there is a subjective side also which we discussed. That's the next para. So we read the next para now. We don't need to pay too much attention to this because it is not relevant really to the Gita. But the Gita is discussing it also because more than the Gita, it is Srimno is discussing. The Gita takes some of the elements of the Sankhya philosophy, but doesn't accept them all. Neither does Srimno, but they are valid up to a certain point. I read the next para. 13 other principles constitute the subjective aspect of cosmic nature. Buddhi or Mahat, Ahankara, Manas, and these 10 sense functions. 5 of knowledge, 5 of action. 5 of knowledge are the eye, ear, nose, tongue, skin. And of action, 5 of action are hand, foot, mouth, and the 2 organs at the lower end of the body. So note, Gita, note that Chitta is not here. Srimda is not mentioning Chitta. That's Advaita philosophy. So Chitta is the basic stuff of consciousness. Okay, so that is not there. So 5 of action and 5 of, Manas, mind, is the original sense which perceives all objects and reacts upon them. Okay, so for it has at once an inferent and an efferent activity. The Manas interprets the incoming data, visual data, auditory data, as I said, olfactory data, gustatory data, and tactile data. And it is interpreting these. But on the other hand, you are interacting with the universe also through your hands, your legs, your mouth, and the organs. There is a constant interaction between the individual and the universe. Okay, so efferent and inferent. Receives by perception what the Gita calls the outward touches of things, bahya sparsha, and so forms its idea of the world and exercises its reactions of active vitality. But it specializes its most ordinary functions of reception by aid of the 5 perceptive senses of hearing, touch, sight, taste and smell. Okay, so he has gone in the order of the ether, air, fire, water, earth. Ether is for the sound, so hearing. Touch is for the air. Sight is for the fire. Taste is for the water. And smell is for the earth. So he has gone in that order. Which make the 5 properties of things, their respective objects, and specializes certain necessary vital functions of reaction by aid of the 5 active senses which operate for speech, locomotion, the seizing of things, ejection and generation. Okay, so ejection, what you normally reject in the morning, okay,
Waste material.
excess food.
Waste material.
Yeah, the excretion, if you want. And the organ of generation. Buddhi, the discriminating principle, is at once intelligence and will. So, it is both intelligence and will. It is that power in nature which discriminates and coordinates. Ahankara, the ego sense, is the subjective principle in Buddhi by which the Purusha is induced to identify himself with Prakriti. We identify ourselves with the body-mind life. And that is the Ahankara. The ego makes you do that. Okay? And her activities. But these 5 subjective principles are themselves as mechanical as much a part of the inconscient energy as these which constitute her objective operations. So your idea that I am smelling, I am hearing, I am seeing is wrong. That's what is being said. If we find it difficult to realize how intelligence and will can be properties of the mechanical inconscient and themselves mechanical, we have only to remember that modern science itself has been driven to the same conclusion. So we have to explain this a little bit. Modern science, at least not today anymore, but until recently, is basing itself only on matter being the only reality. So if matter is reality, a living creature is a product of matter. A human being is a product of matter.
Empirical observation.
Yes, also. Empirical observation, but they believe that life is coming from matter and mind also is coming from matter. If you say, how is that possible? How can matter which is gross produce something which is living and mind? The Indian materialists give a very interesting example. Okay? They say Purusha and Prakriti coming together create life and mind. So they take an interesting example. Take a beetle leaf. It is green. It is green. Take some lime, what you call chunam in our Indian. Put the two together and chew them. You get red color.
Yeah.
So red color is neither here nor there, and yet it comes. So why can't matter, Purusha and Prakriti coming together, produce life and produce mind? That's their argument. So same is saying, you have to only go back to science and see that they are saying the same thing. Okay? So even in the mechanical action of the atom, there is a power which can only be called an inconscient will, and in all the works of nature that pervading will does inconsciently the works of intelligence. So there is an intelligence everywhere, but at a very low level.
But the inconscient contains everything within itself.
Yes, that's right. Okay? Even in the mechanical action of the atom, there is a power which can only be called an inconscient will, and in all the works of nature that pervading will does inconsciently the works of intelligence. He has put it only in one sentence, but you can give 2-3 examples just to explain this. One is the creeper. The plant that creeps up. So, how does it go up? What it does is, it sends up, a
Tendril.
Yeah.
Tendril.
A tendril, that's right. I was looking for the word, but only tentacular were coming into my mind. So it sends out a tendril, and if you do time-lapse photography, you will see that the tendril is doing this, looking for support. And the moment it gets a support, it winds itself around it. Is this not consciousness? There is a low level of consciousness in the plant also. Then again, the example of the migration of birds. How do they know that they have to go down south? And how do they know where they have to go? Everywhere you will see in nature that there is an intelligence working at a lower level. The salmon fish go back up the river and lay their eggs where they came from. The turtles go out to sea and come back to the same beach every year to lay their eggs. So how come all these things are happening? The spider, how does it know that it has to build a beautiful web so that it can catch insects for its food? So nature is there everywhere, unconsciously doing conscious works. That's what Srivendra says. There are many more examples.
I don't know if I've told you about the vine, the creeper. If you put a post in the ground, the creeper will go towards it and wrap around it.
Yeah.
If you remove that post and put it on the other side,
It'll go there.
It will go there.
Exactly.
Always.
So there is consciousness. It's looking for supports. So that's the interesting part. So even in inconscient nature, there is a purpose and a consciousness. That's what Swami is saying. And it's very interesting, even scientifically, if you see the atom, okay, it is not absolutely ruled by law. There seems to be a free will in it. There is an element of uncertainty. There is no law can fix it. They say that if you want to locate the position of an atom in the the frames of height, length and width, if you want to, the coordinates, what you call, you can do that, but you will never know its speed. But if you want to determine its speed, you will not know its position. So this is the uncertainty which is there at the very root of matter. So it is not ruled absolutely by law. There seems to be an uncertainty there. So that's a consciousness. So we come back to our... So modern science itself has been driven to the same conclusion. Even in the mechanical action of the atom, there is a power which can only be called an inconscient will, and in all the works of nature, that pervading will does inconsciently the works of intelligence. What we call mental intelligence is precisely the same thing in its essence as that which discriminates and coordinates subconsciously in all the activities of the material universe. And conscious mind itself, science has tried to demonstrate, is only a result and transcript of the mechanical action of the inconscient. But Sankhya explains what modern science leaves in obscurity: the process by which the mechanical and inconscient takes on the appearance of consciousness. It is because of the reflection of Prakriti in Purusha. The light of consciousness of the soul is attributed to the workings of the mechanical energy, and it is thus that the Purusha, observing nature as a witness and forgetting himself, is deluded with the idea generated in her that it is he who thinks, feels, wills, acts, while all the time the operation of thinking, willing, feeling, willing, acting is conducted really by her and her three modes, and not by himself at all. To get rid of this delusion is the first step towards the liberation of the soul from nature and her works. So that's exactly what liberation is. You realize that you are not the doer of action. You are not the thinker. You are not the one who is having emotions. It is nature which is making you do all this. You are a puppet. And that is liberation. The soul or the consciousness realizes, comes out of the prison of body, mind, life, and realizes that it is not the doer. That's the first big spiritual experience. So, there are certainly plenty of things in our existence which the Sankhya does not explain at all, or does not explain satisfactorily. But if all we need is a rational explanation of the cosmic processes in their principles as a basis for a great object common to the ancient philosophies, the liberation of the soul from the obsession of cosmic nature, then the Sankhya explanation of the world and the Sankhya way of liberation seem as good as and as effective as any other. What we do not seize at first is why it should bring in an element of pluralism into its dualism by affirming one Prakriti but many Purushas. I am reading the whole thing, then we will discuss it. It would seem that the existence of one Purusha and one Prakriti should be sufficient to account for the creation and procession of the universe. But the Sankhya was bound to evolve pluralism by its rigid analytical observation of the principle of things. First, actually, we find that there are many conscious beings in the world, and each regards the same world in its own way and has its independent experience of its subjective and objective things. His separate dealings with the same perceptive and reactive processes. If there were only one Purusha, there would not be this central independence and separativeness, but all would see the world in an identical fashion and with a common subjectivity and objectivity. Because Prakriti is one, all witness the same world. Because her principles are everywhere the same, the general principles which constitute internal and external experience are the same for all. But the infinite difference of view and outlook and attitude, action and experience and escape from experience, a difference not of the natural operations which are the same, but of the witnessing consciousness, are utterly inexplicable except on the supposition that there is a multiplicity of witnesses, many Purushas. The separative ego sense, we may say, is a sufficient explanation. But the ego sense is a common principle of nature and need not vary. For by itself, it simply induces the Purusha to identify himself with Prakriti. If there is only one Purusha, all beings would be one, joined and alike in their egoistic consciousness. However different in detail might be the mere forms and combinations of their natural parts, there would be no difference of soul outlook and soul experience. The variations of nature ought not to make all this central difference. This multiplicity of outlook and from beginning to end, this separateness of experience in one witness, one Purusha. Therefore, the pluralism of souls is a logical necessity to the pure Sankhya system, divorced from the Vedantic elements of the ancient knowledge which first gave it birth. The cosmos and its process can be explained by the commerce of one Prakriti with one Purusha, but not the multiplicity of conscious beings in the cosmos. So it's a big para, and it's quite difficult to understand at first reading, but we have to explain what is being said. So Srimda is saying that the Sankhya is not always explaining everything. The Advaita philosophy says that there is only one, it's a monistic theory. There is only one ultimate reality, and that is Sat Chit Shakti Ananda. And it is that which breaks itself up into the many. Okay? But the many are only seemings, semblances. They are essentially all the same. To explain this again, we go back to the image of ether, fire, ice, fire, water, vapor. Same thing taking three different forms. So that is the Advaita philosophy. But Sankhya argues in a different way. Sankhya says that if you are having an experience, I am not having the same experience, I am having some other experience. Therefore, there are many Purushas, but only one Prakriti. Prakriti is universe, one universe for all, but each soul is a different Purusha. The Advaita says that's an illusion, there is no separation. You go to the cosmic consciousness, you see that all souls are only one. So, in other words, Sankhya limits itself to the lower planes of consciousness, where it's a fact that you are separate, I am separate. You can be thirsty and I am not thirsty. So we are experiencing different things. You can have liberation, but I need not have liberation. Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, these are all, Sri Ramda and Mother have been liberated. Are we liberated? No. So we are all different. So that's the Sankhya philosophy. It's valid at a lower level. That's basically what the whole paragraph is about. As I said, we don't need to go too much into the details because Sankhya philosophy is not part of the Gita as such. It only touches because Gita is taking Sankhya, three things from Sankhya. It is taking the idea of Purusha and Prakriti. It is also taking the three gunas, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, but doesn't agree with everything. For instance, Gita is monistic, whereas the Sankhya is dualistic. That's the differences are there. Okay?
Namaste. Tomorrow we have Savitri, 6 o'clock.